Hello, everybody, and thank you for having me. This is really a great honor to be part of this unique online conference for marketing professionals. My name is Michal Langmajer, and I work as at a startup called Spendee as a head of product for approximately past 3 years. Before that, I worked for various startups, mainly as a user experience designer or as a product manager. I know that majority of you comes from the corporate world. Therefore, today I'd like to share with you a little insight into how we do things at startups, how we use data and agile in our day-to-day operations, and how it helps us to be fast and effective. And yeah, maybe it will inspire you in some way. But first of all, let me tell you a little bit more about Spendee. Spendee is a small startup established in 2017. And our mission since the very beginning is to help millennials in managing their personal finance. What we found out is that majority of millennials struggle with the basic financial principles, such as having positive cash flow or maintain financial reserve. And in most cases, they don't know exactly how the financial tools such as mortgages or credit cards actually work. As a result, they make bad financial decisions and they don't have control over their money. Our goal is simply to fix this. Currently, we have approximately 350,000 active users, which use Spendee on iOS, Android devices, or in the web browser. As you can probably imagine, in this size, any mistake or bad decision can be critical for our existence. Because of that, we are trying to minimize this risk by making our decisions based on research, behavioral analytics, experiments, or in general, using any data available throughout the whole development process. I'd like to give you a glimpse of this process, and then I would like to tell you 2 stories to demonstrate how we actually use this process. All right, so just a few words about our process. It's derived from design thinking methodology, which incorporates the user insight in the whole journey. And I think that this is really important. The data isn't just one step in this process. It really leads the way and is a fundamental part of every step. We usually start with the discovery phase, when we explore the problematic domain and try to understand what's going on. For this stage, we use data from our internal Google Analytics, from our database, from previously done researches, and sometimes it also required to organize a new research or to use the public data. Basically, any data available are great for this stage. In the next step, we narrow down the whole area into a single topic, which we want to focus and solve. Then, during the ideation and prototyping phase, we come up with some possible solutions for this specified problem. And yeah, of course, these are just hypothetical solutions and might not fit to the users or might be too difficult to use, for example. So that's why we never skip the testing phase. During this phase, we really take this prototype and let our users to test it. And then we gather their feedback. It usually takes 2 or 3 different iterations before we reach the solution, which our users are happy to use, and it also makes sense for the business. Only after that, we are safe to move on to the next step, which is implementation. And in some publications, you might find this process actually ending with the implementation phase. But from my point of view, there is one more absolutely crucial step, and it is the evaluation. After you release a new feature or workflow on the real users, it's important to monitor how it affected the key metrics and the overall user experience. If you think about this process, it's actually ultimately about saving money and time. The earlier in the process you identify an issue, the cheaper and faster it is to fix it. If you think about if you find out during the evaluation phase that your new feature actually doesn't solve an existing problem, then you wasted probably thousands of dollars for something you could discover in the discovery phase. If it solves the problem, but your customers don't understand how to use this particular feature, the usability testing wasn't done properly, and you'll have to spend another thousands of dollars for implementation. Earlier, I told you that I found out the evaluation step super important. Now, my first story, which I'd like to tell you today, is about how we got caught by the Horton effect and how this post-release evaluation actually saved us. It's approximately a year ago. Our goal was to improve our retention. It was pretty straightforward. We started with discovery, and we mapped our user journey from the moment when they download the app through the registration, activation, and eventually become a paying customer. In our case, the activation is, excuse me, is a set of actions which users have to do within the app to understand the core principles and values. Few months earlier, we found out that if users do these actions, they are more likely to stay with us. But let's get back to the funnel. It's pretty obvious that the biggest problem is somewhere after the registration. It looked like our users simply didn't use the app much after the registration. Well, it seemed like a good challenge. Let's improve the onboarding experience so more people actually use the main features. Our hypothesis was that during the registration process, we simply don't tell people enough about the app. We could introduce the basic concepts right away and let them set up everything, even during the registration process before they eventually get into the app. So the idea was that if we explain everything right away and let people invest some time into the initial setup, they'll be more likely to stay with us because they already understand the value and they invested themselves into the app. It sounded to us like a good idea. So we started with the design, and after a few iterations, we had a prototype ready for the usability testing. We went outside to the streets and tried to find out who people who seemed like our demographic audience and who didn't know Spendee, because obviously it could bias their answers. This is, by the way, called guerrilla testing. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it doesn't always work well. But for this particular test, it looked like a great fit. So we spent a day by testing. We tested approximately with 20 different people. Some of them we tested the old app, with the others we tested the new prototype. The results were super positive. People got much better idea what the app is about and how they should use it. And yeah, we got super hyped about it and decided to implement it. To be able to evaluate the real production data, we implemented it as an A/B test, so we could compare the old and the new onboarding at the same time. A few weeks after the release, we were curious about the impact and our metrics, obviously. So we opened the analytics and nothing. It really didn't have almost any impact. What's more, we saw the slight drop in activation. So we dug deeper into our data and charted our funnel again. What happened was that the ratio between people who registered and activated actually rose a lot, but at the same time, the amount of people who finished the registration significantly dropped. This was caused mainly by extra steps and the overall complexity of the new process. I think that there are probably two important learnings from this story. First, you can't make assumptions based on the about your performance or conversions based on qualitative user research. Excuse me. And it helped us to make sure that the flow is clear and people understand what's going on, but it didn't tell us anything about how many people will actually finish the registration. The second learning is that post-release evaluation was absolutely crucial here. If we didn't do the A/B test and didn't evaluate how the new onboarding performs, you'd never find out such a drop in a finished registration. Second story, which I'd like to tell you, is about how important the user feedback is on your journey, and that sometimes with just a few iterations, you might end up with something completely different compared to what you started with. Part of our vision is to help people to be financially healthier and reach their goals thanks to it. In most cases, when we talk to them, they confirm that this is actually the reason why they downloaded the app in the first place. But at the same time, they are also telling us that it's not always so easy to read the information about their financial health, and that they would need something more specific. Our goal here was clear. We needed to redesign this important part of the app to make it easier to understand what people need to do to improve their financial health. We had all necessary information from the feedback from previous researches and from our data from Firebase. So we started with the redesign right away. Our initial thought was that we need to improve the information architecture of the current dashboard. It just needs a makeover. Maybe to recreate some graphs to be more obvious, maybe to add a few new graphs with new information, and in general make it nicer. It took us approximately a week to prepare a new prototype and plan the user testing with a few of our users. After 3 or 4 video calls, we saw that this is not the right approach. The overall understanding of the graphs improved and people found the new statistics interesting, but we also saw that they still struggle with making real life actions based on them. It's still more or less just an interesting number. So we took this feedback and started from the scratch. We designed a new dashboard with much less graphs and statistics, but also with more specific actionable steps. There was, for example, a graph which shows a cash flow, and we added some tips on how the cash flow should actually look like and how user could improve. Just like with the first iteration, we organized a remote user testing and went through the new prototype with a few users. This time, the overall feeling was much better. We saw that people love the actionable insights. They like how the apps is advising them. They keep asking for even wider personalization and more tips on how to achieve these recommendations. For example, if we recommended that they should save around 30% of their salary, they were asking how they could do it with a tight budget or with a spending structure. What we also saw was that even though the engagement was much better here than with the previous version, it still had this kind of dashboard-ish effect. It's still kind of static and boring. So we decided to go even further and build the next prototype based on just these insights, which our users loved most. We designed a feed of bite-sized information, just like you know, for example, from social media. And in this feed, we could provide our users with smarter insights, tips, tricks, advices about their finance, how they should do things, what's going on. we prepared a prototype with approximately 20 of these insights, and we personalized them for our testers, of course, with their permission. The response here was amazing. People loved the new tips, and they kept asking us where they could find this section within the app and when we are going to release it. It was obvious that this is it. This is what we were looking for. But we wanted to get one extra confirmation before we start with the super expensive implementation. So we took a few of these insights, we calculated them for wider audience of our users, and we sent it to them as an email. It was the email with the best open rate and engagement we ever had. It was the last confirmation which we needed, and we knew that we are ready to implement it. Now, we are still in the process of validation of different insights and optimizing what's the best time to send them, how should the audience for each insight look like, and what order is best. But so far, the response is really great. It significantly helped to our retention, and the general feedback is super positive. I think that the major learning here is that we should never stick to what we originally imagined. We shouldn't fall in love with our early ideas. It's important to hear the voice of our users and let the feedback to lead our way. Thank you very much. You can find more similar case studies and stories on my Medium blog or on my LinkedIn account in case you liked it. And now I'm happy to answer all your questions. Thank you.